Does Trump even know what tariffs are? He doesn't seem to. Trump has frequently claimed that tariffs are paid by foreign countries. That's wrong. Tariffs are applied to imports and are paid to the U.S. government by the companies in the U.S. who are importing them. So it's a form of tax, Donald. The tariffs increase the cost of the goods imported, and these costs are generally passed on to the consumer. They cause inflation. Tariffs could also indirectly increase the cost of goods produced in the United States. U.S. producers who compete against importers would be competing against higher priced goods, and they therefore would have less incentive to lower their prices. Tariffs increase inflation, and they go against one of the central conservative tenets of free trade. Conservatives have always been in favor of free trade, but Trump and Republicans really aren't true conservatives now, are they?
When a car gets imported from overseas and a tariff gets paid on it, that added cost gets passed on to you, the consumer. The Honda sedan might have cost $25,000 before the tariff. Now it's going to cost $28,000. You're going to pay it. And you can make an argument about why that might be good policy for other reasons, helping domestic car production. What you cannot do, absolutely, is argue with a straight face that the tariff makes cars cheaper. No, it does the opposite. You pay more for the car because you pay the tax. Trump says tariffs will generate trillions of dollars, and maybe they will. That's trillions of dollars more you will pay for imported goods so producers can pay the government. A tariff is a tax on you.
So a company in Pennsylvania today, all the people were brought in, all the employees, and the boss had to explain to them that they were not going to be getting their Christmas bonuses this year because of Trump's tariffs. They are now having to buy a year's worth of products ahead of time in order to stave off those tariffs. Of course, all the employees were disappointed because they thought that the other country paid the tariffs, which is misinformation that the Republicans put out there to try to fool people. The leopard's gonna eat your face. We're gonna hear more and more stories about this over and over and over again. People are going to regret their decision and realize that they have been conned.
So it's already started. I import products from overseas, products that are made of materials that are not produced here in the US. They haven't been produced in the US for, 50, 60 years. So no matter how much I wanted to pay, I could not get these materials here in the US. And all of my manufacturers have sent me emails letting me know that because Trump was elected and he has threatened tariffs, all of the pricing will go up in January in anticipation of these tariffs. So the goods that I buy will cost me more money, not the other country, and then I will have to raise prices that I sell them at to make that up. So it's already started, and for people who didn't realize what a tariff was, you're about to find out, okay? Because it's going to affect everything that you buy. Because there's not a product on the shelf that doesn't have some element of it that comes from another country. So, good luck.
What's up, folks? Hope you all doing great. This is Fikazo. Hope you guys had an amazing Monday. It's a starting of the week. It's a time of being productive. And by the end of the week, you will check yourself if you did great this week or if you not, and then you know where to correct in the coming weeks. Today we dive deep into real impacts of Trump tariffs on everyday Americans. From companies cutting Christmas bonuses to Walmart and other retailers hiking prices, these tariffs are really shaking up the economy. So guys, stay tuned to find out if this change could affect your wallet. I've gathered some videos around the internet where we're going to watch together, and we know much about tariff, and then we know what is our next step. What are we going to do? You yourself, what are you going to do if Trump's If Trump's tariffs come into action, what are you going to do? We've heard the prices are going to hike. Most of the companies, even some, have informed us, like Walmart, have informed people. Let's watch this video together.
I work at a company that does $40 to $50 million of sales per year, and we import and manufacture all of our products in China. I want to show you guys with numbers the harmful effects that Trump's tariffs are going to have on you, the consumer, and the overall economy. So the number one product that we sell at our company costs $10.60 to make, and we sell it for $40. After you deduct all expenses such as corporate overhead, warehousing, and logistics, we net $4 per unit sold. This $4 that we net here also includes the current customs fee we pay of 3% right now. Now, Donald Trump wants to impose a 60% tariff, which means our cost is going to go from $10.60 all the way to $16.96. If we keep the price the same, we're going to lose money per unit sold. So what do we have to do? We have to increase the price from $40 to roughly $46 to make the same net margin that we did before. And this results in a 15% increase in price. And when you increase the price, guess what happens? You lose sales. The net effect of the tariff is going to vary by industry, it's going to vary by product, but the end result is the consumer is always going to have to end up bearing all the cost. I've spent a lot of time researching Donald Trump's tax plan. I actually think it's great for lower and middle class families, but the tariff that he wants to impose wipes out all the good that he wants to do. And I was going to vote for Donald Trump too, but just because of his one stance on tariffs, I'm out. I'm not casting my vote for Donald Trump. Now, is this a negotiating or leverage tactic? I have zero idea, but I can only go based off of what he says he's going to do. And imposing tariffs are not good for the consumer.
Many Americans still think Trump would be better for the economy. I don't think there's much basis for that. Trump didn't build a strong economy when he was president. He inherited one from Obama, and he immediately started tearing it apart by running up the deficit and levying harmful tariffs. We cannot afford for him to run up deficits even more. Before COVID hit, the economy was showing signs of going into a recession. Trump's policies are bad. The Wall Street Journal reported most economists believe inflation, deficits, and interest rates would be higher under Trump. 60 Nobel Prize-winning economists said Trump's economic plans would reignite inflation and cause lasting harm to the economy. Aside from that, Trump keeps demonstrating more and more that he is not of sound mind. He is unlikely to come up with any coherent policies on his own, and he will not be surrounded by the best people. Trump will be easily manipulated by people looking to serve their own interests, not the interests of the common.
I made a video about tariffs, explaining why they're really bad economic policy, because the only thing that they're guaranteed to do is raise prices for U.S. consumers and lead to retaliation against U.S. producers, especially if the tariff is a 20% blanket import tax, which is what Trump proposed. Well, I got a lot of pushback in the comments basically saying that I didn't care about the American worker. Now, the point of tariffs, and this logic is incredibly appealing, but the point of tariffs is to make it harder to produce goods in other countries so that you produce those goods at home. And yeah, that could raise costs and make it pricier for U.S. consumers. But we've raised revenue through tariffs, so we can offset it through the income tax system. This is worth it to bring jobs back. Like I said, I understand the appeal. It sounds really nice. Unfortunately, it's just not that simple of a story in real life, and that can be unsatisfying to hear. But sometimes economic policy has to be about doing the right thing, not the easy thing, if you want to accomplish the task. Tariffs would not be very good at bringing jobs back to the United States. So I want to make a few points about this. Number one, for all the talk about bringing jobs back, retaliation against U.S. producers mean that you are risking jobs that we currently have. I think what's lost in this conversation so much is that we have manufacturing employment. It's not as high as it used to be. Manufacturing employment in the U.S. peaked in 1979. But it's not as if those workers don't matter. And jeopardizing their export markets doesn't have any other type of cost. We're basically putting at risk all of the workers who currently work in production that is exported for the possibility of having new workers that don't currently exist for new kind of domestic production. That is a really high risk because retaliation is almost impossible to predict. We think of this trade relationship as there's the US and there's China and we trade with them and that's it. But you need to multiply that by 100 because there's lots of countries that we trade with, and retaliation doesn't just have an effect on one country. It can have an effect on multiple countries and multiple goods. And we're risking a lot for our current producer base for a potential worker that we don't have already. Now, again, you could say that would be worth the cost to have more manufacturing here. But, in absolute number terms, maybe the biggest argument against tariffs is that it's just a really ineffective and expensive way to go about it. Researchers at the University of Chicago looked at the washing machine tariff that Trump instituted in 2017. And what they noted is that given the increase in cost to consumers and other economic effects, each job that was created from this washing machine tariff cost about $800,000. If you want to bring jobs back to the US and you have $800,000 per job to throw around, you could do it in a lot more effective, direct way than what you would get from a tariff. That's probably the biggest argument against them, is just how ineffective they are relative to their cost. But what I thought was really interesting is in the washing machine study from Chicago is that they found an effect that maybe wasn't predicted, which is that the price of dryers went up too. Dryers weren't affected by the tariff, right? So I'm a seller. I sell imported washing machines and dryers. Okay, so now the washing machines get more expensive because I have to pay an import tax on them, but I sell them as a pair. So if I have to make washing machines 5% more expensive, you know what? I'm going to make dryers 5% more expensive, which is exactly what they did. They raised the cost of dryers, even though dryers weren't subject to the import tax. This is the type of unintended but myriad and diffuse consequences that come from tariffs. So that's why, as a policy on its own, it's really not worth it. Now, I think for the trickiest argument, what about trying to bring manufacturing jobs back to the US? There is something to be said for how easy the inverse seemed. That when we had manufacturing here, we lowered the gate, opened ourselves up for free trade, and then the jobs went away. So it should be as easy as just lifting the gate back up again. But there was more than going on to manufacturing employment in the US than just trade. In particular, there were two things. One is automation. In a lot of industries, more jobs were lost to automation than they were to trade, but it's, you've got a lot of easy fall guys of we can blame every job lost in manufacturing for the past 60 years on free trade agreements, even though we know automation played a big role in that as well. And automation occurred well before AI and all kinds of, it's called AI now. There was automation, there's technical change, becoming less labor intensive as a manufacturer has been called a lot of things over time, but it contributes as much, if not more, to manufacturing job loss than trade does. The other thing to keep in mind is that the US has relatively expensive workers. Now, it might not feel that way to you. You might not feel that you're very high paid, but compared to other countries, it's more expensive to make things here, in part because the labor force costs more. Well, you can either be really upset about that and say, well, I still want manufacturing in the US to look like it did in 1955, or you could take that on its face and say, okay, we're more expensive workers. So if we're going to have manufacturing in the US, it's going to be really high-end manufacturing that requires a highly skilled manufacturing workforce that we can be competitive on here. This is the difference between trying to recreate the past and wanting to build the future. Just in putting up a 20% import ban or an import tax, y'all, that's fighting for a past that we will not get back. We're not going to have manufacturing employment like we did in 1955. We didn't have it in 1970. We didn't have it in 1980, and we won't have it now. There's too many factors at play. If we want to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States, then we need to do it strategically, and we need to do it with the assumption that our workers cost more and that they should cost more because they're American workers and they're awesome, and not trade away low-wage jobs that are simply not sustainable here. So this is the kind of final reason why I think tariffs are so ineffective as a policy. If you're going to spend $800,000 per job, let's put it in a job that we know is viable here. I think in some ways this is what was so effective about the CHIPS and Science Act, was that these are very, kind of technologically advanced manufacturing facilities. They require a very highly skilled workforce. It's something that American workers can do, but we didn't have much of a base of either knowledge, skills, or industrial activity to do it here. So that's what the CHIPS and Science Act invested in. And of course, it came with import restrictions to protect this nascent domestic industry. So if that's the type of jobs we want, then we need to find high-end industries that we can protect in their infancy to make sure that we're competitive for the future, so we don't have to have so much manipulation through trade policy to protect our jobs here, because we are competitive. I mean, I think the same thing goes for the production of electric vehicles. Biden didn't, get rid of Trump's tariffs. In fact, he added one for Chinese electric vehicles that tend to cost a lot less than the electric vehicles made in the United States. But if electric vehicles are the future, we should invest in making them here. And that's more than just a tariff, right? That was a full-scale industrial policy to support the manufacturing and sale of electric vehicles so that the future is made here. And that's what I think that's the whole point. Maybe I should have just said that at the beginning. We don't want to make the past here. We want to make the future. If you want to make the future, you're not just throwing around tariffs. You're constructing really well thought out industrial policy.
Donald Trump is proposing we eliminate the income tax and replace it with tariffs. Regardless of your political views, we need to drop politics for a second. From an economics point of view, this is a terrible, economically illiterate policy. Reason number one, out of all taxes that have ever existed tariffs are the least popular among most economists. It hurts every party involved. It hurts the consumer, and we are all consumers. It grinds international trade to a slowing halt. It is consensus in the field of capitalist economics that trade is vital for the world. Reason number two, income taxes are the United States government's biggest source of revenue, and tariffs are a very small part of it. So to make up for that budget shortfall, we'd have to raise tariffs even higher than they already are. That would be disastrous for our internal economy and the global economy. Now I'm gonna bring politics back into it. Republicans philosophically hate the income tax, and I get that. But they also pride themselves in being the party that understands economics. The field of economics is mainly concerned with efficiency. This is not an understatement. If you support eliminating the income tax and replacing it with the least efficient tax ever, you don't understand economics. Or maybe you do, you just care about putting Trump in more. It's very hyperbolic when both sides say, if the guy I disagree with gets into office, the economy is screwed. I'm saying this right now. If Trump gets into office and successfully implements this policy, the economy is screwed.
I just want to make sure I understand this correctly, and correct me if I'm mistaken in my understanding. You're going to tell me that the same people who want to dismantle the Department of Education didn't know what a tariff is? The same people who want to dismantle the Department of Education didn't know what the role of the vice president is? The same people who lacked literacy to read Project 2025 want to dismantle the Department of Education. I don't know. I feel like that could be a potential case study as to why we actually need the Department of Education and possibly need more regulations and oversight as far as meeting standards. But again, like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just the writing on the wall for me.
We have huge breaking news right now. Both Walmart and Lowe's are sounding the alarms that they may have to raise prices on goods for consumers because of Donald Trump's tariffs plan. Today, both Walmart CFO and the CFO of Lowe's said that prices likely will go up if tariffs are imposed according to Donald Trump's economic plan. Specifically, Trump campaigned on a plan to institute up to 20% tariffs on all incoming goods and up to 100% tariffs on goods coming in from China. And just for example, Lowe's, actually 40% of the goods they sell to Americans comes from China. If tariffs are imposed, Walmart and Lowe's will be charging you more for the things you buy. It's really that simple. And their CFOs are now sounding the alarm just 2 months before Trump is set to be inaugurated. This is the first big impact we are seeing from Trump's economic policies. And they haven't even taken effect yet. So if tariffs are implemented, your costs are only going to go up. Comment below your thoughts, spread the word, and follow along for all the news you need to know about.
Are you a consumer in America? Do you shop at Walmart? Well, get ready, because rollback season is over, probably permanently. That's right, the CFO of Walmart came out today, and also the CFO of Lowe's, by the way, came out today, and they said that in order to prepare for the tariffs that are going to go in place, they have to start raising the cost of their goods to the American consumer. That's right. You will now be paying more for your products at Walmart. They have to prepare for those tariffs and all. It's almost like the big, huge tax break that they're about to receive, just Well, it just ain't enough, is it? Seems to me like, with the big tax break, wasn't that supposed to trickle down to the consumer? I mean, that's what the billionaires tell us, right? Give us a tax break and it'll trickle down to our workers and our consumers. Trickle, trickle. Turns out, no. This is their way of double dipping you. That's right. They're going to take the huge tax cut, too, and then they're just going to raise your goods based on the fact that there might be a tariff put in place. Double dip much? Fucked around and found out, didn't you, America? Now, the rest of us are going to sit back and watch the shit show. No, we're not that worried, you see, because we're used to the struggle. But a lot of you who voted for him, well, you've never had any struggle. You wouldn't know struggle if it was a bag over your face cutting off your oxygen.
It's like Walmart is in a contest with itself on just being the worst fucking company on planet Earth, right? Aside the fact that they are bad for the environment, bad for the community, they're essentially just selling you garbage, knowing full well that you have to replace that garbage in like an hour and a half, right? And now they're outraged that, well, they're sounding the alarm that they're gonna have to raise prices because of tariffs. Please note that they gave an enormous amount of money to the Trump campaign in pro-tariff, because you know what they're going to do, right? They're going to hide additional fees within the tariff. So say they're like, oh, well, we have to raise everything 20%. Let's raise everything 25% and give 5% back to our stakeholders. And so if you have the opportunity to not shop at Walmart, if you have the opportunity to shop anywhere else aside from Walmart, now is the time.
Okay, so let's talk about the difference between the Trump tariffs and what happens if you bring the manufacturing back to the US. So if you go to Walmart, a lot of times you can buy a t-shirt, sweater, pair of pants, whatever, for like $15. That would be a common price at Walmart for the clothing. And that means the cost of manufacturing that sweater, for example, was probably somewhere, by the time they got it into the US, they paid the tariff, they paid all of the shipping to get it from China to the US, it probably costs $5. And then the company has to mark it up, and so they mark it up to like $7.50, so they get their profit, and then that's what they're going to sell it to Walmart for, and then Walmart is going to mark it up 100%, so it's now $15. Okay, but the product price started at $5 because the labor rates are so low in China. So if you don't buy it from China and you're going to manufacture it here in the US, you have to pay labor rates. And if it costs, like that $5 sweater in China took 4 hours to make, which it can, by the time you finish sewing it, put the embellishments on it, that 4 hours of sewing time in the US at $8 an hour is now $32. So the company has to mark it up, and so let's say they add 50% to it. So at $32, we're now looking at $48 is what they're going to sell it to the store for. And then the store will mark it up 2 times. So it's 48 plus 48 is 96, plus 48 is $144. The exact same garment, made in China, sold at Walmart for $15, made in the US, sold in a retail store for $144. It's all because of the labor rate. So your choice is going to be continue buying products that are manufactured in China, and once it comes in, they will tack on 60% to 100% of the cost of making it, and the company will turn around and add that to the price, or add that to the cost of the garment, add their markup on top, and then sell it to whatever store is going to sell it, and they will add their markup on top of it. This is how it works with all retail products. So ultimately, no matter what way you go, you are going to pay higher prices for everything that you would have bought in from overseas, and even higher prices if it's manufactured here, simply because of labor rates. So there's no two ways about it. Because of these tariffs, you are going to pay higher prices for basic items that are manufactured overseas, which are pretty much everything at Walmart, everything on Amazon. That's how this works. That's why companies manufacture overseas, so they can get really cheap labor rates and bring you the products at an affordable price. But with this system of tariffs or moving the manufacturing to the US, you are absolutely paying higher prices. It's just a question of how high the price is, and that's going to be determined by where the product is made. So while you're advocating bringing all this manufacturing back to the US, in doing so, you have to recognize that you're going to pay way more if you make it in the US. And if you're good with that, then that's great. But there's a whole lot of Americans who can't afford that. But that's what the vote for Trump just got you. That's how it plays itself out in everyday terms. That's just how tariffs and manufacturing in the US works. It's all about the cost of manufacturing.
So Donald Trump in his campaign said that once he becomes the president, he plans to put tariffs on all imports coming into the US. This would likely include a general 10% tariff on most imports and even higher on goods from places like China and Mexico. So Trump believes that these tariffs would protect US businesses and discourage things like drug trafficking. But many economists warn that this would make everyday items more expensive for Americans. Because when businesses have to pay tariffs, they often raise their prices to cover those costs. Let me explain how tariffs work if you have never taken a basic economics class before. When a country puts a tariff on imported goods, it's like adding a tax on things that come in from other countries. So who ends up paying this tax? Usually it's the businesses that import the items, not the producers in other countries from whom you are buying. So here's the catch. To cover the cost of this tariff, the businesses in the US that are importing the goods from other countries will raise the price when the things go in the store. So in the end, everyday people like us end up paying higher prices on imported goods. This increase in price can lead to something called inflation. Now, inflation happens when the general cost of things start to go up across the board, not just few items. So if Trump adds tariff on a lot of imported goods and the prices for those goods go up, it can cause inflation. That's because the more people pay for products, the higher the overall price level can get in the US, which can make everyday life more expensive. We will find out if he really imposes tariff across the board later, in 2025. And this was just a basic explanation of how tariffs can cause inflation if they're imposed on several items that a country is importing. I'm an economist and follow me for more. This video is not to support or say anything against his policies. It's basically to explain the economics behind tariffs. It is not the producers of the foreign countries that are paying the tax. It's the importers in the US who are actually paying the tax, and then they will pass those tax to the people who will end up buying those products. So it's not really good in terms of economic theory.
Now, it's very sad to see people who voted for TP, and I think they knew before that he will cut the tax, but there will be tariffs. Okay? That's what he said, I think. Maybe you can correct me in the comment section there. But I'm wondering how people go to vote without having the full picture, the full image, the full picture of what they are going to vote for. They don't know about tariff. They don't even have information. They were saying, oh man, tariff, we're gonna tax foreign countries. But people get excited. You know, if something that is happening to your another person, you just get excited. Oh, it's happening. But you're not sure what is happening there, and you've never even researched if it will affect you or if it will come back to you. That is what happened. And now people have realized that their candidates have lied to them because they shouldn't have voted for him or his plans because he's the one bringing tariffs right now. And tariffs is taxing anything that American companies that are buying from abroad. But when people were voting, they thought they are taxing Chinese 60%. And right now, China is not going to pay the tariff. Your local company there, Walmart and other companies, they are the one to pay the tariff. That's why Walmart came in front and say, we're going to add some prices because of tariffs. That is what happening in 2024, which also gets effects on even people who didn't vote. Imagine a worker somewhere in a company there. Your boss tells you you're not going to get Christmas bonuses because of the tariffs, like what you've had in Pennsylvania or other places. So it means your company is going to buy some products, is going to buy stuff before Trump put tariffs into action. So it also affects you. Right now, it's a very sad moment to those people who voted against, because their voices was nothing. But it comes to a person who voted to push this guy. I think it comes to, I can call it a hatred, something like that. But you didn't know that it would come back on you. I don't know. Tell me in the comment section, what do you think about this? Because these things, it's very, very hard to understand how you vote someone. You already know the policies. You already know what's happening. But you voted against your right. You voted against what you deserve. You voted against your health rights, your financial rights. That is what you voted for. Yes, you went to vote saying, now I want this guy to deport 11 millions. Do you think, or have you ever thought, if those 11 undocumented million people get deported, have you thought how things will go? Have you thought how the country will run? On my side, I even believe it's possible, because those people, the one holding, doing a lot of things in America. They are the one of the people that are holding the economy. They are the hard workers. So if you have them, if you lose them, you're gonna need them, because who is going to do the work they were doing? This is very hard thing to understand, because we should have general knowledge of what we are doing, what we are voting, and then we also be confident of our votes, and then we be proud of. But right now, people are hiding, families are separating, divorces are booming because of the votes. That happens few days ago. It's just few days ago. Even the guy is not in the office. Just a few days ago. But things are heating up. So what can we do? What are you gonna do? You're gonna have 4 years in hell. You're gonna have 4 years suffering. You're gonna have 4 years when you don't have access in most of your things you used to have access to. Whether the financial, whether the health, and all the stuff. So it's gonna be a very hard and difficult years to most people. there. Yep. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please don't forget to like, share, and comment down below. What do you think? And what is your thoughts about Trump's tariff and what is happening right now in the States? See you in the next video.